Hey everybody, just real quick before this video starts, I wanted to let you know that this was coming from our stream that we did on draft day, and also that if you weren't there during the stream, Michael unfortunately had some computer problems, had to take his computer in, so that's why he doesn't have his normal background and things look a little different. I'm having some mic issues, I gotta get a new cord as well, so just want to let you know that in advance before this video starts. But with that said, let's get right into recapping the Tampa Bay Lightning 2020 draft class. Welcome back, everybody, to the Bay Bolts channel. My name is Jake Ricker. Wow, can't even say my name correctly. As always, I'm here with my good friend, Michael Wax. Michael, how you doing today, my friend?
You know, if you saw the live stream yesterday, you would know I'm having some technical difficulties in my life, but otherwise, I can't complain. I thought the Lightning did a very good job in their draft, and that's what we're here to talk about.
Yep, and let's talk about that draft. The Lightning, I thought, did a very good draft, but we'll get to our overall thoughts on the draft at the end of this video. So let's talk about the first pick in round number 2. The Lightning did not have a first-round draft pick this year, but they started things off at pick number 57, which they actually did not have coming in tonight. They traded for this pick. They traded the 114 draft pick of this year and a second-round pick next year in 2021 to the Montreal Canadiens to acquire this pick. And with the pick, they took center Jack Finley. And at first glance, you might think, another center? Do we really need more centers? Well, there's something special about Jack Finley, and that is the fact that he's 6'6". This guy is a monster, and he's not even a defenseman. But looking at the stats for Jack Finley, last year he had a total of 61 games played, 19 goals, 38 assists for a total of 57 points. A really good scoring forward, as you see there with the stats, and he's a big guy. I love this pick from the Bolts.
I love it too, and you know, when we originally saw that Elliot Freeman tweet go across our ticker, we were all like, they're trading a second rounder and a fourth rounder to move up like a couple of spots. Why would they do that? And then you look at who they picked, and you know, all doubt kind of flies out the window. If the Lightning really want someone, if Al Murray really wants someone, he's going to go get him. So, you know, the fact that this guy is 6'6", he's a high IQ player, which, you know, he can teach, you know, physical attributes. You cannot teach the game itself. So those high IQ players are necessary. The one knock against him is, you know, because he's 6'6", it's a little bit more difficult with his skating. We saw it with Samsonov in the minors. We saw it with Schuster on the main roster. Big guys have a tendency to skate very poorly, which is why Victor Hedman is such a unicorn. But if Barb Underhill, who's the skating coach for the Lightning and the Maple Leafs, can help out Kelly with his skating, we should be absolutely fine.
Exactly, and the big-time forward didn't stop there, though, because with the second round pick the Lightning had at pick number 62, they would go on to draft center Gage Goncalves, who is another 6-foot defenseman, not as big as Jack Finley at 6'6", but still over 6 feet. I believe the Lightning didn't even have one person, a forward, that was over 6 foot with the Stanley Cup championship roster. So adding some height to this team, and his stats, looking at last year, he had a total of 60 games played for 33 goals, 38 assists, and 71 points. So another very good scoring forward. Again, going into this draft, we had talked about the main points of need are probably left wing and right-handed defensemen. 2 centers on the first 2 picks, but both these guys seem like very good scoring forwards. And as I mentioned with Jack Finley, and now Goncalves as well, over 6 feet, adds a little bit of grit to that forward core.
Yeah, and I want to apologize to Jack Finley for calling him Kelly earlier. You know, my mistake. I mention all the time, you know, those people that mess up names, you know, it's disheartening to see. So I apologize to him if he's watching this video, or anyone else that he knows is watching this video. You know, he is a talented player. Hope he does well with the Lightning, and I hope I never mess up that name again. As for Goncalves, Really talented, really good skater, which is not something that we could say about Finley. Um, but he is one of those gritty type of guys. We look at the Lightning's center depth this year in their playoff run. Anthony Cirelli is your third line center. Any one of the combinations of Barclay Goodrow, Yanni Gord, and Blake Coleman as your third line center, Cedric Paquette is your fourth line center. All of those guys are extremely gritty. So, he fits in the Lightning mold. You ask why so many centers. Center is a position you can never have enough of. You look at the main roster. A lot of people on the main roster can play center. Are they that good at faceoffs? No, but they play very good center defense, which is another big part of playing as a center. So Goncalves, Finley, a big boost to what I think is going to be a depleted center roster for either juniors or the AHL for the Lightning, with a lot of people getting called up to the NHL. So, stock up that farm again.
And those centers can often play multiple positions sometimes. We have a lot of Lightning players that can play the left wing, right wing, or even the center position as well. But moving on into the third round, the Lightning had the 85th pick in this third round. They would select right winger Maxim Groshev, so a right winger from Russia. And as you know, we Lightning fans like our right wing rushers, right wing Russian. Looking at his stats, though, he actually played in multiple leagues throughout last season. He played 36 games in the KHL where he had 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points. He also played 8 games in the MHL where he had 3 goals, 2 assists, and 5 points. He also played for the Russia under-20 team in the World Cup Juniors. So he has played in a lot of different scenarios. He's played in some big-time tournaments as well. But, these Russian right wingers, not too bad. So obviously the scouting team saw something in him. I like the pick. It's not my favorite, but I don't mind it either.
Yeah, so the one thing that, a lot of hockey pundits are talking about when talking about and evaluating Russian talent is the 3 depths of leagues that there are for the KHL, the VHL, and the MHL. When you look at the KHL, that's sort of like the NHL. So the fact that he did put up some points and played in a lot of games in the KHL is a very promising sign when it comes to Gorshev's talent and potential. And the fact that he dominated towards the lower league, which you would call like the AHL, or even the juniors in Canada, where they have all of these like OHL, CHL. So those are the types of people that you'd be playing against, like your peers in those younger leagues. And he dominated them. Like he was putting up more points per game. He was playing very defensively responsible, as evidenced by his plus minus, which isn't the greatest stat in the world, but whenever you're have that good range, you're a solid defender. I like the pick. Again, like you mentioned, not the biggest fan of the selection. You mentioned during the live stream that it could have been a left winger. We could have taken a left winger. We could have taken a defenseman. We took both of those later in the draft, but getting a high pick that is a left winger or a defenseman would have probably been a more ideal situation.
Right, but as you mentioned, we did take some defensemen later on. So with the second pick in the third round, that was pick number 93, the Lightning would go on to select defenseman Jack Thompson, which is a pick I like a lot. Let's look at his stats, though. In 63 games played, he had 13 goals and 19 assists for a total of 32 points, which is actually very good for a defenseman. And this is a right-handed defenseman specifically, which again at the beginning of this show and on the live stream I mentioned, that was one position that the Lightning don't have a ton of depth at. So I really love this pick. He seems like a great defenseman. The scouts say he's got some high potential as well, and right-handed defenseman. So I can't complain at all about this pick. Good pick from the Bolts here in the third round.
When I look at right-handed defensemen, specifically with the Lightning, I don't really concern myself with points. We look at the past couple of years. Jan Ruda, Dan Girardi. Kevin Shattenkirk was a bit of an anomaly. But those types of players, Eric Chernak is a perfect example of a right-handed defenseman who is defensively responsible and puts up points, when he can. So, getting points for a right-handed defenseman isn't necessarily their job, especially when they're playing like someone or with someone like a left-handed defenseman like Ryan McDonough. And this kid is not only defensively responsible, he plays just like Ryan McDonough. He gets up in the rush. He made it so because he had double-digit goals this past year. Like, how many defensemen can you say that about? No matter when you're talking about the league. So, I really, really like the pick. The fact that it's a right-handed defenseman that plays like this is fantastic for the organization. I think that he might spend another year, developing his skills before they call him up to the AHL or sign him to the AHL, excuse me. And then hopefully one day we see him as, Victor Hedman's defense partner or something like that. Like, that would be the ideal situation. And I know that's not how everything pans out, but I am really looking forward to this pick.
Right, and you mentioned Victor Hedman as well. He's a guy that's considered one of the best defensemen in the league, and he doesn't always put up huge numbers and points because as a defenseman, your main job is to prevent other goals from going on from the other team. So, but a great pick. I love it a lot. The Lightning did not stop there, though, for right-handed defensemen as we headed into the fourth round with pick number 116. The Lightning would select, I might mispronounce this, but Eamon Powell. Which another right-handed defenseman, as I mentioned, another pick that I love. Looking at his stats, he played in two different leagues last year. In the USDP, he played 43 games for 6 goals, 8 assists, and 14 points. And he also played in the USHL, where he had 19 games played for 5 goals, 6 assists, and a total of 11 points. So again, a little bit smaller numbers than you compare him to Jack Thompson, but kind of similar to Jack Thompson as well. Right-handed defenseman, very good defender. I love both these picks from the Bolts.
Yeah, I really like the pick. Another right-handed defenseman is exactly the type of guy that you need. This one, kind of goes a little bit more into the mold of right-handed defenseman that puts up a lot of points. I think of him as more of a Brett Burns type player, where he's fine defensively. Don't get me wrong; I think he has the potential of being better defensively than someone like Brett Burns. But Powell is that type of guy where you're going to see him put up a ton of points, and that's fine. Kevin Shattenkirk is the same way, and as long as they develop him to the point where his skating is good and his hockey IQ is that among his peers, I think he should be just fine.
Absolutely. And then moving on into the fifth round, which, by the way, the Lightning did not have a fifth round pick coming into this draft, but after a couple of trades, they end up with the fifth round pick. It was the 147th pick of the draft, and they would go on to select left winger Jaydon Dureau. Again, I apologize if I mispronounced that name, but this is one of my favorite picks of the draft because, as I mentioned, Michael, left wingers are something of need for the Lightning. I think we only have 2, maybe 3 left wingers on the Lightning roster right now. So looking at his stats, he played a total of 61 games, had 19 goals, 51 assists, and 70 points last year. So he looks like a really good playmaker. That's just 1 year, and obviously you can't base everything off that, but I really love this pick. We needed the left wing position, and he's can really put up the assists.
Yeah, he reminds me of, and I hate doing comparables, and I've done them the past few picks, but just another one. He reminds me of the other sideness Nikita Kucherov. He's a very good puck distributor, and the word around him was that he's not really a fan of taking shots. Like he will if he has to. Who does that sound like? That sounds like Nikita Kucherov.
Exactly.
You know, really good playmaker. Very happy that they got someone in the organization that actually plays on their strong side rather than a right winger playing on their weak side or a center playing one of the wing positions. We see Boris Kachuk, Taylor Radish. Those are the type of players that sort of have to play on one wing or the other. This guy, what his position is, and if everything goes well, which is the best case scenario, he slots right into that left wing position.
Exactly, and that's what I loved most about this pick, especially him being at that left wing side. But moving on into the 6th round, the Lightning would have 2 picks in the 6th round. The first one was at number 157. The Lightning would select another winger, but this time on the right side, as they selected right winger Nick Capone, who is a very interesting player because, talking about player comparison, he compared himself to none other than Tom Wilson. So a very physical guy. Looking at his stats last year, he played in 34 games for 7 goals, 12 assists, and a total of 19 points. I think the biggest thing to look at when looking at this draft pick is the physicality. Comparing yourself to Tom Wilson, that's quite the comparison when it comes to a physicality aspect.
Well, yeah, and you saw the first 2 draft picks of ours, Finley and Goncalves, compare themselves to St. Louis Blues. I believe that Finley compared himself to Ryan O'Reilly, which is an amazing comparison. I would love if he turned into Ryan O'Reilly. And Goncalves compared himself to Jaden Schwartz, who is a very good complementary piece. The Tom Wilson comparison scares me a little bit because he has been, and by he I mean Capone, he was suspended 4 times last year, all in separate incidences. Which, if you know anything about Tom Wilson is what many would call a greasy player. Many of of the people around the league would call him a dirty player. So if Capone wants to be known as a Tom Wilson, that kind of scares me. We've had our problems with certain people getting suspended within the organization for dirty acts or this or that. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a tough indictment for him, but I do think that eventually, if a power forward for the Lightning is a great idea. If he minimizes the penalties, he should be just fine.
Right, I think that's the key word there. If he's like Tom Wilson in the fact that he can be gritty, put on some big hits, not like Tom Wilson in the way where he gets suspended all of the time. So we'll have to see how he develops, obviously, but an interesting pick from the Lightning. Moving on, though, to their second 6th round pick, the Lightning at 186 will go and select a goaltender, and his name was Amir Miftakhov. Again, I apologize if I mispronounced that name. But what do we know about this goaltender? Well, one, he's a Russian goaltender, and we all know that we love our Russian goaltenders with Andrei Vasilevsky. But looking at his stats, he played in a couple of leagues as well, just like the other Russian we talked about earlier. His most games played was in the VHL. He played 23 games there, had 2.19 goals against average, and a save percentage of .913. But the most interesting fact, I think, for him is that he also played with the Russia under-20 team in the World Junior Cup, and he actually had more playing time than the number 11 overall pick, who was the original starter for that team.
Yeah, he replaced Askarov, and he played really well for Russia's World Junior Hockey Championship team at that point. I was not super happy with this pick originally because, I talked during the stream all the time about you don't need goaltending. You don't need goaltending. And it was a bit hypocritical of me because, I said you can never have too many centers. Then they pick a goaltender, and I said, you don't need any more goaltenders. So, during the stream, I was very adamant that, with Sharona from a couple years ago, with Taylor from a couple years ago, with Alnefelt from this past year's draft, and by past year, I mean 2019, you didn't need another goaltender in the system, especially with Vasilevsky locked down the starter job, McLean in the backup. The fact that they have a bunch of UFA goalies, but they just re-signed Spencer Martin, excuse you, or bless you, I should say. But the fact that they re-signed Spencer Martin to a one-year contract today, they are looking towards the future. And the highlights that I've seen from him in 2018 and 2019, in 2020, the rare highlights that you see from the KHL, this kid can make some saves, like some really good saves. And I think the problem with him is that, sometimes he has this glowing red weak spot on him that opponents will target over and over and over again. You see it all the time with Vasilevsky. What's Vasilevsky's weak spot? It's his glove hand. A lot of people go to his glove hand all the time. This guy, it's tough to pinpoint exactly because, I don't see a ton of KHL, VHL, MHL game tape. But the numbers speak for themselves, and he looks to be a pretty good goaltender.
Well, whatever they're doing over there in Russia, they need to keep it up because obviously, as Lightning fans know, it works pretty well over here in the NHL. But also something to consider too. Three of the Lightning's goaltenders, they have Vasilevsky obviously locked up for a long time. McLean's under contract for one more year, and then the three other goaltenders that are on the roster are all unrestricted free agents right now, and they are all much older. Scott Wedgwood is 28, and then I can't remember who else. There's the 30-year-old and the 25-year-old. So,
Just to help you out a little bit, Scott Wedgwood is going into free agency. Mike Condon is going into free agency, and Zach Foucault is going into free agency. As I mentioned earlier, Spencer Martin, according to Cap Friendly, re-signed this morning.
Well, there you go. So still a couple of goaltenders that are heading to free agency, a little bit older though. So I do like this pick a lot from them. We'll have to see and how he works out. But let's talk about the last pick for the Lightning. It was in round number 7 with pick number 217, Mr. Irrelevant, if you will, as the last pick of the draft, and they went on to select right winger Declan McDonnell. Again, I apologize if I mispronounced some of these names, but looking at his stats last year, he played in 63 games for 21 goals, 21 assists, and 42 points. Another very good scoring two-way forward type of guy.
Yeah, two-way phenom from what I've heard about, what he's been able to do at certain levels. 20-goal scorer is always nice to see, no matter what league that you're playing in. 20 goals is sort of the benchmark of like, okay, we've got a player here on the forward side of things. I'm a fan of this pick as a 7th rounder, as the last pick of the draft. There are probably some unrestricted free agents that, or undrafted free agents, I should say, I apologize, that maybe should have been drafted. But again, it's the last pick of the draft. The Lightning have someone else they want to go get. They pick this guy last in draft, and then they can go sign somebody else. I'm cool with it. Like I have no outright problems with any of the picks that the Lightning made. And I think that taking a flyer on a 7th round guy is not the worst thing in the world.
Right. I do think the Lightning did very good overall with this draft class. There's not much to complain about. Speaking of the overall draft class, Michael, let's talk about our overall grades for this 2020 draft class. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we get to this is that something you have to consider is, we have fun talking about the picks and trying to speculate what kind of players they're going to be and whether they're a bust or maybe a gem or a diamond in the rough, however you want to phrase it. But you really can't determine what kind of draft picks these guys were until 3 or 4 years down the road. Because obviously we have to see how they develop. Some of them could turn out really good. Some of them could, kind of falter and never maybe even get signed. There's a lot of things that go into this. So just keep in mind that to really give a good grade on how this draft class went for the 2020 NHL draft, we have to wait 3 or 4 years. But Michael, what's your grade for your initial thoughts on this draft class?
I'm going to stick with my thoughts from the end of yesterday. I'm going to give it a B. A lot of talent in this draft. I have 2 reasons that I'm hesitant to give this draft an A. Number one, just like you mentioned, we won't know about these picks for 3 or 4 years down the line. Number two, and that sort of leans into number one, we don't have a true superstar in this draft. You can look at the Rangers drafting Lafreniere. You can look at the Kings drafting Quentin Byfield and say those guys are going to make an impact right away, and that's why I'm going to give them an A. The Lightning don't have anybody like that. They did the smart thing and they loaded up on draft picks, because the more opportunities that you have to hit, the more often you're going to hit, especially when you have a great scouting staff like the Lightning do. So the only reasons I'm not giving it an A are because of those 2 reasons that I previously mentioned. I love the collection of talent. Once again, I hope Capone goes in the direction of Tom Wilson, the scorer, and Tom Wilson, the physical player, not Tom Wilson, the suspended guy. But other than that, I think that there is no real downside to any of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, the Lightning also did not have a first-round pick, as we mentioned before, which is why mainly they don't have one of those guys. But I do agree with the B grade. I'm going to go ahead and give them a B+. I think with what they had, they did a very good job. My favorite picks obviously being Jack Finley, and then our left winger, Jaydon Dureau. Since we needed that left wing position a lot. Something I mentioned a lot on stream, but I'm really excited about this draft class. I'm really excited to see how they develop over these next couple of years, and hopefully they'll turn into some real superstars. We'll have another Andre Palat or Braden Point on our hands in these next couple of years. But that's all going to do it for us today, everyone. I hope you did enjoy this episode. If you did enjoy us breaking down this draft, please be sure to leave a like down in the video. That lets us know that you're enjoying this content, and it really does help us out. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notification so you don't miss out on more content like this. We got a lot of fun things coming your guys' way. But with that said, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And as always, Tampa Bay Lightning are Stanley Cup champions.
Roll.